So this is the location of the oil dipstick here. Okay, so to check the oil level, take the dipstick out and give it a wipe, otherwise the oil will be splattered up over the top of the lines and you can't read it properly. Put it back in, take it out and observe where it is. So it is actually just here, just below the max. It's reasonably difficult to see because the oil in this engine is brand new. When it's run for a few thousand miles, it's a lot easier to tell. So the master cylinder on a Morris Minor is hidden underneath the driver's carpet. So you have to pull the driver's carpet out of the way, and this is the top of the Morris Minor master cylinder. This cover is normally bolted down, but you can take this off if you undo all the screws, if they come undone, and you can see all the linkages and everything in there. So this is where the clutch and brake pedal pivot from, and it's a good idea to keep that well greased. To check the actual brake fluid level, you need to pop this lid off, and you can use, I've made a little dipstick up so I can see what I'm doing, and you should be half an inch down below the threaded part. So I can see quite easily that that's the right level. You can also use one of these testers which tests for the water level, or the water content in your brake fluid. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. So if we put that on, dip it in, should come up with a reading. Right, so it's the bottom OK light that came on saying it's got less than 1% water detected. You don't want a lot of water in your brake fluid, otherwise it will boil when you use the brakes hard and you'll get brake fade. Thinking about fuel supply, check out your fuel filter if you have one fitted, make sure it's not showing signs of being blocked up. Check your fuel lines, make sure they're not perished. You can get perished on a corner, or the joints can go if you're not careful. Sometimes it's hard to spot, making sure the joints are nice and secure. So another good thing to regularly check is the oil level in your SU carb. There's a little damper there that works with the oil. If I take that out of the way, right, so looking inside, that part that is in focus is where you want to check your oil level, and you don't want to fill it to the top of that. You want to fill it below so that there is, well, wobbly, so that there is enough space for that to go in. You want enough space for that to be able to go in, because that takes up some of the space for the oil. It's kind of that eureka moment. So you can use the original spec SAE 20 grade. A lot of people use 3-in-1. A lot of people use 2050 engine oil, and some people even combine the engine oil and the 3-in-1 to change the grade and whatever suits them and suits the particular carb setup and engine that they've got. So when you go to put this back in, I'm going to pop it in the top and let it go down very slowly. Don't force it in, and then just nip that up. If you overfill the oil, then it will tend to get sucked into the engine and it will cause your engine to smoke and might cause you a little bit of worry unnecessarily. So keep it topped up but to the right level. Cue diagram. So you want to definitely make sure that your tyre pressures are correct. Here, get yourself a little gauge that you can press in there. Can't find mine at the moment, so I can't show you. It's probably buried in the boot at the back of the garage. I think it should be about 28. Most people say for 145, 155 radials. Now when you're checking tyre pressures, don't forget to check the spare. In our case, this car's spare is actually missing because it's having a new tyre fitted. But make sure the spare is at the right pressure, because you don't want to have to try and sort that out when you're at the side of a road in an emergency. Okay, so you want to check your radiator coolant level. It wants to be above the core but not too high. If it's too high, the excess water will get blown out by the system. Make sure your coolant is the right mixture of antifreeze and water, so the engine is protected in the summer and in the winter. Whilst you're looking at considering the engine coolant, make sure your hoses aren't showing signs of wear. Two main ones up here and here. For the coolant, I like to make sure these aren't going corroding horrible, because they can be a right pain to get off if they're all rusted up. So you could get a squirt of plus gas in there. It's sort of preventative maintenance, really. Make sure it's easy to take apart next time you have to do the job. Also, when you're looking at and considering the coolant of the engine, you want to have a little look, make sure your fan belt isn't horribly loose. Check it for damage, for perishing and cuts and splits. on the ignition, make sure the spark plug leads are in good condition, that they're not frayed where they're rubbing against an edge somewhere. Make sure that they're located so that they're not rubbing against anything horribly. You could pop the distributor cap off and make sure that it's not cracked anywhere and that the little springy bit inside it is still springy. Check the rotor arm, drop a little bit of oil in the felt underneath the screw underneath the rotor arm, and while you're looking at the distributor, make sure that your vacuum pipe is also nice and secure at both ends. So going into the carburettor, you want this to be a good joint and not leaking air. Also, don't forget to check your number plate lights at the back and make sure they're working. Something that's often overlooked. Make sure your washer fluid is topped up. I can see it's just below the top there. It's got a good mixture of water and windscreen cleaner. So also check that your windscreen blades are in good condition, that they're not splitting at the ends, because that can often happen. Once it starts to go, it will go fairly quickly, so good to get them replaced. Ensure your visibility is good when you're driving. Another good thing is to check the connections on your battery. Make sure they're all good and tight and there's not horrible corrosion there. And this one is loose, so I've obviously not tightened up that since I last worked on the electrics. It's worthwhile checking these things, so I didn't realise it was like that. Good job it's not actually being used much at the moment. The things I like to do is drop a bit of oil and grease onto the springs and joints of bonnet catchers, because you don't want them seizing up, and this looks like it needs a bit of oiling and greasing. It's obviously not been done recently, so it's a little job to add on. And also make sure that all of these release linkages are greased up in a good state. When we got the car, this spring was missing. This is an anti-rattle spring for the rod release, this bit here, and then it's on this little shaped piece of metal here, so you just move that up and down to tighten it. That should stop it rattling horribly, which is what it did on the first journey home.